human.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm
Great.
good. You can hear me and everything is good?
Yes, everything great.
Okay, perfect. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate your time and yeah, making the connection.
It's awesome to connect finally to you, to see you. I think you're doing really great work.
I
Like, I
appre- I appreciate that.
love that work you're doing, the way you communicating it, it's great.
Yeah, I really appreciate that and back at you. So that's why this is cool, right? There's so many negatives with social media and technology, but this is one of the positives, right? Is that we can connect across the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah. I thought you like most of the people think I live in the US.
So
So
where are you? I forget where you said you're at right now.
I'm right now in Poland.
Okay.
I travel between the UK, Belgium, Poland. I travel a lot,
Okay.
actually, countries because I have athletes all over the place. So
Yep.
yeah, traveling a lot.
Well, awesome. Well, why don't we start with that? Why don't we talk a little bit more about your story? Because I don't know, we don't really know each other. We've connected on social media,
Yeah.
but I admire your message and what it is that you're putting out there. So, from my perspective, it seems like you did fight. You were at one point a professional fighter, I believe,
Yeah.
kickboxing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so talk about that journey and from being a fighter to being a coach and what that looks like.
I grew up in Germany, in Hamburg. And when I was really young, I went into kickboxing, first into judo. First, actually, my mom brought me into a soccer team, and then I liked to jump on the guys and hit them. And they
Yeah.
were like, "I think soccer is not the right sport for her. You should put her into judo." So my mom put me into judo, and then, but it was like kids class, really playing around, and I really liked it. And I grew up also partly on a village, so we had horses. So I was a wild child, right? Lots of energy, just a free soul. I like to move, I like to connect, and so contact sports, I think, was just really a natural thing for me. And back then, look, I'm 39 now, so that's quite some years ago. When I was like 14, 15, I went into kickboxing then really, and then Muay Thai. And since the Netherlands is our neighbor country, that's where you go when you really want, or back then, of course, now it's a little bit different, but back then, when you want to take it on a really serious level, it was the Netherlands. They were dominating the sport of kickboxing.
Mm.
So I went and I trained with Andy Sauer, who was a K1 Max champion, great, great legend of the sport. He's retired now too, and trained with some of the best guys in the world over their different teams, moved around. And I did most of my fights actually in the Netherlands, also in China, like also Germany, Switzerland, of course, all over the place, but yeah, mainly in the Netherlands. Yeah, I was fighting quite 70 kilos, and 65 kilos is quite a big weight class for girls also. So the Dutch girls are big and very strong. So they had lots of really good fighters. Really great time for kickboxing back then.
Mm.
And yeah, that's, I, between school, of course, like I had to go back and forth. Um, and then 2008, I think it was 2008, I did my first professional fight. And also, I had a lot of injuries because I have problems with my knees. I always had with the ligaments problems. So both of my ACLs ripped, like they're, how to say it in English? Yeah, they were gone.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then parallel, like I was still fighting professionally, but more and more because of my injuries, I went into coaching. I never wanted to be a coach, actually. And I always laugh about that. You know who told me? One of the first coaches actually who told me I will be a good coach was Henry Hooft from
Yeah.
when back then the Blixilians. I trained with them with Rashad and Vitor and Tyrone was there, Cosmo Alexander. So it was a great team in the past. I went back and forth also there to the train, and Henry Hooft told me back then, he's like, "You'll be a very good coach." And now we laugh because I go back to Killcliff with my guys, and we have a good collaboration with them. And he says, "Yeah, I told you, you'll be a good coach." And
Yeah.
it just went like this. I think, to be honest, yeah, I was a very good technical fighter, very good chess player, very good technical, good eye, very good defense. But I not always had this real killer instinct. I was lacking it, and didn't have this finisher thing, right? I liked to control the fight, yeah, dominate the fight, but I didn't necessarily always like to finish it. And I think I'm just much more natural as a coach because I like deconstructing everything. I
Yeah.
like deconstructing the sport, the mind. Obviously, I studied physical therapy, then psychology, then contemplative practices. So I like learning. I like studying, and I like applying that knowledge, also for myself, of course, and first, and then to other people. I think that's much more natural to me than being really. And additional thing is like I really don't like to be in the spotlight. I'm just not a person who likes. I love them to be in the spotlight. It's for me nothing greater than seeing them succeed. And you know that, right? You work with great fighters yourself. It is such a beautiful feeling, right? If you could give your knowledge and your experience to someone, and then they run with this, and then you all of a sudden you're in the UFC and they're in the top level and they're winning their fights, and they're, as human beings, they're growing and they're shining. It's for me really the most. I think it's my most biggest passion. It's my meaning in my life.
Yeah, I love that. So if you could go back and be your coach, you could go back and give yourself advice, and you're in your early 20s, you're fighting. What would that advice look like? I mean, I know we can't go back, but if you could, what would that look like?
I think I would really mainly, and of course, it's such a, I know it's, and you talk a lot about that too, it's such a word overused right now, but I would say be mindful and be fully present.
Mm,
Be really present with where you are at that moment, fully immersed in what you're doing in that moment. Because I was so worried what people think. I was so worried what will be and what was, especially, of course, after you lose a few fights. I was terrified and constantly judging, constantly anticipating, right? My mind went crazy. I had no control over the mental time traveling, the mind wandering. It was completely out of control. My brain simulated everything, just not what happened was not
mm,
there. Where I wasn't there where I was, and I seriously, I missed a big chunk of my career, and I fought for the biggest promotions in the world, right? Great things in China, Wuling Fang. I've fought for King of Kings, really great promotions in the kickboxing, World Fighting League, like so many of them. And I fought the best in the world. And honestly, half of it I don't remember because I was so stressed. And as we always say, right, 50% of our life, some research studies to say 50% of our life, we are completely on automatic pilot.
mm,
And I definitely know it was like this to me. I think it's even more. I really feel like more than half of my fights I don't remember because I was so stressed and mm, always concerned about the performance, what people would think about. Yeah, like I said, constantly simulating and mental time traveling, and you miss life in that moment. You miss all of this experience. You don't. I think, yeah, I think you miss the biggest learnings also because you're so
mhm.
busy with something else what might never happen actually.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so happy to connect, because that's such a big piece of how I think about things.
Mm,
So two questions that came up as you were speaking is, how do you teach your athletes? I know this is, it's not a simple answer, but I think it's really important to think about the integration of these concepts, because it's one thing to have awareness of them
yeah.
and be able to notice that, which is a huge step. But then to integrate that in your practice, I think is really important. And then the
Mm.
second question is, when in your life did you have that moment of awaking to your mind and to awaken to how you were processing the world, to where you started to be able to change it?
So I think it was actually when I stopped my career and I immersed myself much more into coaching, like when I was around like 10, 12 years ago, when I went really deeply into coaching because I stopped fighting. I think it's already 10 years ago, 9, 10 years ago. So when I stepped back from it and I could take really a different angle on it and see it in a different perspective. And I started missing it and realizing, wow, what amazing thing I could do, and realizing though I was never really present with that. I think that was really a wake up call for me. Then I saw it, of course, in the fighters I train. I was like, wow, it's the mental, not the physical. We know that, right? It's the mental part. And I think, yeah, maybe like some 8 years ago, I think it was like, yeah, when I finished my career, then I had some reflection, contemplation time, and then I realized that that's not how I want to live.
Hmm.
And yeah, but it came, it comes in steps, right? You learn something new, right? Then you contemplate, you let it really sink in. As a coach, of course, you integrate it into your teachings. You see again, how do your fighters or your athletes, how do they respond to it, and then again you contemplate, right? You work on it, and so it comes like when it comes to me, the awakening process comes in waves. Sometimes you go a few steps backwards, of course, also.
Right.
But it's part of the, yeah. But I think I'm still far from being where I would like to be, where I think the potential of me as a human can be. But it's beautiful, right? Because it's still a lot of things to come, a lot
Right.
of things done, but a lot of things to come, and that's great to know. But I think, yeah, it's always like the awakening process is a process, as I just said. And answering questions, how do I implement it? I Since I studied physical therapy, psychology, and the contemplative practices, I actually connected all of those practices. So I work on a lot on body physiology and autonomic nervous system. Of course, classical psychology, cognitive behavior therapy, cognitive restructuring, reframing, things like that. But also, I utilize a lot of mindfulness practices and attention training. Mm, I'm a big fan of doing and really doing a lot of exercises with them, especially with the athletes. Right? Actually, I'm just saying, especially with the athletes, but it's because of most of them. Most of my clients are professional MMA fighters or boxers. They're usually in martial arts because it's and special forces because that's what I'm specialized in. So I focus a lot on doing different techniques, different exercises, because it's about the state change, right? You need to feel it.
Mm.
Most of our athletes, because we're quite embodied, we start, when we start feeling the change, we start really believing it also. So I put usually, let me say that, let me go back. So I have this mindful athlete program, which I always post about, also post some snippets about, and on my social media. And I put this program together, and this program focuses, it's a 6 steps program actually, that focuses on a lot of attention training, mindful awareness training, and mindfulness. There's a lot parts of deconstructing your experience when you really go into cognitive restructuring. So you work more with your cognitive mind. And then there's a lot of nervous system regulation. And you know a lot about this because you work with the breath a lot also. So eye exercises and breathing exercises. And then it finishes off with more goal setting and visualization practices. Right. So I think the key to really do the change is to work on different levels. Right. A lot of people say, like, okay, just mindfulness, just the classical psychology, or just the breathing and the nervous system regulation. But as human beings, we are always mind, body, spirit, as we thousands of years say that also, right? It's the warriors. I think you might know that my program is called also Free Your Warrior Spirit, right? So I didn't come up with anything new. It's thousands of years human knowledge. It's always mind, body, spirit.
Mm.
And I think you know that also. That's why I'm such a fan of your work, that I think you work very similarly. That you work, of course, on their bodies, right? You work on their minds, and you work on their, let's say, more spiritual part, right? On the souls.
Yeah.
And that's how I think, at least, and I'm working same like you with some of the best guys in the world. this is how I feel they're stepping into their whole potential.
Hmm.
And I work, for example, I work in Poland now. I work with Jan Blachowicz, Mahmoud Khalidov, but really, really great guys. And they understand it now because they start feeling it. They went through this whole process in the last year and 2 years with me. But a lot of people here still don't understand it. I think that's really you're in a much better country, actually, in a much better place for doing what we're doing, because people are, I think, a little bit more open to that.
Yeah.
Because when I start speaking about mind, body, spirit, that you have to work equally on the mind, on the body, and the spirit, it's still quite, yeah, people don't always understand that, and they don't always share my opinion on
Mm.
this, of course.
With the people that you work with that are at the top, do you see similarities in those mind, body, spirit, that things that people do innately or naturally? Do you see an openness to learning, to welcoming fear? Like, do you tend to see that, or do you think that people can get away with a lot because they're so gifted, but it is that might be the very top, the to get that next 1% or 2%? What do you see with that?
You know, um, all of my fighters, because I have 43 fighters, right? They're really quite different in characters because they come from very different cultures and countries. But one similarity, not all of them, but most of them, who are really top level athletes, but also in the special forces, the guys on the top there, they they are quite aware by nature. They search for something else. They search for deeper meaning. They search for, they want to awaken. They want to be conscious. Um, they just, their consciousness raises. And I think it's really hard to get to the top in our sports or in anything else that we do without that, with this aspect of your soul, also of your consciousness,
Mm.
to broaden your consciousness, right? To elevating. And I think, even look, when you're, I spent some time in New Zealand, and there was Adesanya, right? He's extremely conscious man, very awake, very sharp, right? I work very well also with Ray Longo and the guys in New York, right? They're quite, they're different by characters, but they're all like, they're quite switched on, all of them. Look, you're
Hmm.
athlete, right? You're athlete. He's very awake.
Hmm.
And Mahmoud Khalidov, our Polish guy, Chechenian guy, he, most of our work when we started working was very deep philosophical talks there. And people on the top, because look, physically we all know how to strike, how to wrestle, how to do what we need to do. But I definitely think that what makes the difference, the purpose, the meaning, the consciousness level is also in the fight, right? To be super conscious, very embodied, extremely awake and aware what's happening, situational awareness, focus, attention, right? More the cognitive functions, but then also like really the wide consciousness of where you are, the presence. How much is that is so much also to win the fight, right? It's all the little differences what makes, right, on the top. They're
Yeah.
all similar skills, and that is definitely something. It was a long answer, but I think, yeah, definitely you see those similarities. They're special.
Mm.
That you just see it, right? And the top level guys, you see, like me as a coach, for example, they sometimes laugh about it. I look at someone, he or she walks over the mat, and I'm like, yeah, he has big potential. You can see it immediately. There's a champion potential. You see it, how they walk, how they talk, the eye contact they have, the way they breathe, the way their eyes, right? How they use the eyes, or how they look, not just the look at you, just like the movement of the eyes, right? Their awareness levels, their way of communication, their energy levels. You can see it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. You said something the other day, or you posted something the other day on Instagram that really resonated with me, and I would like to just hear your thoughts on this. You made a post about authenticity, and I often think that one of the from my perspective, one of the most powerful things we can develop in our life is authenticity with ourselves, right? And it's very difficult because there's a lot there, right? We're a very complicated organism, but with all the chaos and all the craziness, and when things just seem like maybe they don't make sense to me, I can always come back to this grounding in authenticity with self, and then let that trickle into the other relationships in my life. So I would love to hear your perspective on that, how you think about that, how you do that in your own life. Yeah.
That is so funny that you pick up on this because, you know, I don't know what you know about, for example, Poland. That's a country, it's an ex-communist country, and ex-communist countries, it was not very supported to be authentic, right? That's why there was communism, right? Everybody should be the same. Shouldn't stand out. You shouldn't express your opinion, express yourself too much. And it's still, although it's 30 years ago, it's still very strong in these cultures. And I am a big believer in authenticity and in working to unleash or uncover our true selves. Because as we know, right, we are born, then we take on all the programs, the conditioning, everything we pick up, someone said or we learned, and so on. And most of us, we never find really back to our true selves. It's so covered by so many layers of protection, also because of course it's to preserve ourselves and to protect ourselves. So of course there's a very important psychological mechanism, but then I think really to shine and to do something extraordinary, you need to uncover those layers, and that's a very painful process. Especially for me, I had actually the last year in Poland, it was a challenging time for me because when it comes to mental performance, I'm the first mental performance coach in MMA who really went out there, and because I'm a striking coach also, so let me say that actually, I went with Jan Blachowicz to his fight against Rakic, right? And the Polish people didn't know me because I never lived in Poland. I stayed there, and then Jan took me on to the team. I agreed to it for the fight to be with him, and in 7 weeks I was with him in camp. And he lost his belt to Glover before. He said to me, seriously, or you make that happen in 7 weeks, there'll be Jan Blachowicz again, Polish power, needs to get out, or I retire. And in 7 weeks, I turned his whole career around. And we worked very, very intensely together. And he spoke a lot about this on media and social media. And it was a shock for Poland, because they were like, a mental performance coach. A lot of people in Poland still think that when you have a mental performance coach, there's something wrong with you. You need a psychotherapist. Although I always said, like, I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a mental performance coach. I'm here to help you to step into your peak potential, right? To actually unleash your authentic self. And it was very hard for me because I run into so many walls, because people were like, this is bullshit. This is not what the mind, who needs the mind? And I was like, wow, okay. So they're like, oh, they're just physically, the stronger you are. And I'm like, no, that's not the way. That's actually not how it is. Like, it's such a old school thinking. So, and for me, so having a lot of pressure and running in a lot of walls, it was really interesting to see, because I am quite authentic and I'm quite outspoken. I express myself, I think, quite freely as a person. And I worked very hard on this. And immediately my conditions came up and I got less confident. I felt it. I felt a little bit nervous all of a sudden before the interviews, because they criticized me a lot on the interviews. Why a mental performance coach? Why would she even go there? What could she do? What would a mental performance coach do? And actually, Jan Blachowicz is 40. This guy lives from his mind, right? He has a strong mind, and that's how he doesn't get new skills anymore. He needs to go into the cage and be like, okay, I'm ready here. Polish power, this mountain energy he always talks about, right? Mental training is the most important training for him, or let's say maybe not the most important training, but it's a very, very important aspect of his being as a fighter now, being 40-year-old. And he showed it in the last two fights that he still can go, but it was the mental right? And so speaking about that, so for me, so the authenticity is extremely important, but it's so hard sometimes, right? When the environment puts so much pressure on you. I never had that because I worked always really easy with people. I spent many years in the USA, in the UK, right, and where people are quite open, especially to mental performance and peak performance. So I ran in the real wall, and it was interesting, but very healthy also at the end, or very, let's say, there was a lot growth happening for me because it was one of the biggest challenges of my life to bring that knowledge and go out and do the podcast and do the interviews and explain again and again why I think it is important topic, mental performance and the mind and mental health and brain and so on. And yeah, so now I'm back to my authentic self, but it is, honestly, it is so hard. And I think that that's something we step into our let's say true self, real self, and then sometimes it gets hard, and the environment, there's a lot of pressure because of course we need to behave accordingly to the social norms, and then it's a constant adjusting, right? A constant, like, it's almost like you have to work. No, it's not almost, you have to work on that, right? To be your true self, it's sometimes just constant work, because again the conditioning come up, the programs come in, the social norms, everything. There's a lot of pressure on all of us. And coming back also to the fighter, like for example Jan Blachowicz, he, what I main part in the 7 weeks from him going from I retire and I'm done with the UFC, I gave my belt away to Glover and that's it, I will never do this again, I don't want to be there, to going out against Rakic and being 150% confident, and the old man came really out, and it was beautiful to see. He, even his facial expression changed, everything changed. He walked out to the fight and everybody was like, wow, there's the Blachowicz back, right here he is. It was mainly uncovering his true self, reawakening his meaning, his purpose, who he really is, what he really wants to do. Because it was not that he didn't want to fight anymore, that he all of a sudden, because he lost the belt, he doesn't want to be in the UFC anymore, right? Fighting 20 years in MMA. It's, of course, it's not the case. It's the pain, that you're anxious, that you feel you're not good enough anymore, that you're not the man you have been, right? There was so much pain in this. And we just stripped this away, right? So speaking about uncovering the authentic self, that's exactly what I've done, right? We regulated his nervous system because he was so much in sympathetic dominance that he was constantly in stress, right? So we did a lot of breathing, like I said, eye exercises, a lot of peripheral vision activation. We did a lot of embodiment exercises. I showed him much more how to go into regeneration quicker because he was constantly stressed and yeah, anxious about things. And I had the same thing with Mahmoud Khalidov. I had 4 weeks. He didn't perform very well in sparring, and he said like, okay, can you do something? And this guy has 10 years of depression and anxiety, and he speaks about that. 4 weeks, he went being 43-year-old into the fight. He fought at the National Stadium at KSW, I think a month ago. We went out there and he did his best performance of his life. And he said, speaking again, so the topic is, you're on point with the topic, the authentic and the true self. He looked at me and made me absolute cry. He looked at me and he said, wow, you showed me who I can be without the demons, without the depression, without the anxiety. You showed me who I really am. Can you imagine my eyes? I just lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's another, right? So you that you just pick and choose this topic is so on point, because I think that is what we can do, right? We can help people to step into their best version. And I think our true selves, we're born awakened, we are born beautiful and so intelligent, right? And then we take on all the programs, all the layers, and then it's the rest of the life is just unstripping. And that's our jobs, right? We're coaches. That's what I think what is a part of our job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. How would you, is it okay, let me say that, do you think it is possible to communicate that in a simplified statement. It's like if somebody has, you mentioned this earlier, it's stages, right? You wake up, you awaken over a long process, and that's probably the only way it can happen. But I find when communicating to people, the challenge can be to try to use language that resonates with them, right?
Mm.
To help them understand how can being more present, how can being more mindful, how can um, opening to our mind, right? These things that make sense to me and make sense to you because we practiced it for a while. But if you were to try to put that into very simple terms, where would you go and what would you say? And maybe it's not possible, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
It actually, it's part of, because my slogan is always about free your warrior spirit. I talk a lot about the warrior spirit and about the true warrior spirit. Because and I think for me and for a lot of, especially athletes, a lot of fighters also, they understand, okay, warrior spirit, that's something they're interested in.
Right.
Right. And look, when you speak about the true warrior spirit, it is not chaotic aggression, it's focused aggression, it's confidence, right? It's control over your attention, it's full presence, because that's what you need for peak performance. That's what you need to get into the flow state. Right? And it works very well with the guys I'm working with, right? I explain everything in the context of true warrior spirit, not what we think, like I said, the chaotic energy and the aggression, and right. No, it's the control, the mental training, the control over your cognitive functions, the control over your body. And with that, of course, comes peak performance. Of course, comes empowerment. Of course, you step into your best version you can, right? Because it's certain steps you do and change will come. You cannot, if you do specific steps and you work for the betterment of mind, body, and spirit, then change will come. And that is for me the true embodiment of warrior spirit, right? Being conscious, being self-aware, having great situational awareness, communication skills, but also loyalty, kindness, compassion, but focused aggression, right? It has to be the balance, right? It's always the balance between the softer the softer side, but then also, of course, the true warrior spirit. It's a balanced human being. So for me, freeing the warrior spirit and teaching them what real warrior spirit is about, it's a great way. I think it works very well to communicate it.
What are examples of embodiment drills that you do when you talk about that, getting somebody to I'm assuming that is they're getting out of their head and they're getting into their body and feeling,
Yeah.
and that's very
Yeah.
powerful. But what would be an example that you could share on how you apply that technique?
Of course, we all, I think that's the base. Of course, we all do ice baths, right? We're
Right.
here in Eastern European countries, right? Before Wim Hof came up with this, I think everybody was
Just
swimming
jump in the
here.
river, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what we do here a lot.
Yeah.
And but yeah, of course we do. But as techniques, I work a lot with mindful movement. So everything about really being fully embodied and mindful in shadow boxing, in walking, and in functional training, right? We do that. I incorporate it a lot. I do a lot of body scan, yoga nidra stuff, things like where, yeah, I think those exercises. I think they're quite known right now. Yeah, I would say that mainly actually the ice baths, body scan and mindful, all kinds of variation of body scans, I would say, and all kinds of variation of mindful movement.
Yeah.
Which then, of course, if you connect it with the breathing, right? When you really get into your breathing, awareness of breath, of course, also conscious breathing, of course, breath regulation, but also awareness of breath definitely brings you down into the body to connect to your nervous system. So I think that would be the main practices, and I think that works quite well. And I
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
work very similar.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good to know. I think we're, on the same page with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and an ice bath will facilitate uh feeling, right? It'll, especially if it's something you don't enjoy or you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable with. Something that I've thought about a lot recently, and I do my best to communicate this to people, is using the ice bath as this very tangible thing. And I think there are some people that they avoid it. It's scary to them. No, I'm not going to do that. And then you have people that just endure it, which is maybe better than repressing it. But if you're just right, you're just fighting through it. You're tough. I've got this, and you'll stay in. But ultimately, we're looking for that surrender to it. And
Yeah.
maybe surrender isn't the right word for some people. Maybe that's we attack it. To me, attack and surrender, they're very similar. They're just words. But if we can get in and open to it and feel it and welcome
Yeah.
it, it's
Open.
a very different experience.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Immerse yourself.
is
Yeah.
that, is that something that you think about as a way to train that?
Totally. Totally. I look, you can do it. Everything what is uncomfortable. Some of our guys, they run a lot. Not all of them do that. Of course, like the more heavier guys usually don't do that so much. They run rather short distances, but the smaller guys, they like running. And our strength and conditioning coach, it's quite a fan of running, and yeah. And this is extremely uncomfortable for them because he makes them sprint a lot, and of course they
Yeah.
go up. I think you guys do that too. You're in the mountains, so it's perfect where you are, I think. So very uncomfortable, right? It's pain.
Yeah.
It's the air bike. I mean, oh my God, every fighter knows air bike. Oh no,
Yeah.
it's time for the air bike, right? It's pain. And that's exactly it. Embrace it. Hard sparring. Embrace it. Not
Yeah.
endure it. Don't try to disassociate. It's okay if you if that's always the last thing, right? Okay, if you can't do anything else, just disassociate. Try to
Yeah.
disassociate, just go through it. But at the end, speaking again about building, when you build your authentic self, when you build right your real champion's mindset, when you build the true self, and you need to embrace, and you cannot be fully present when you're not embracing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that doesn't go together. You cannot be open and expansive in your mind,
Yeah.
um, and and like you have to be expansive to be present. Let's say, right? Yeah, you cannot if you are just to endure it or just get it. Like that's the problem. Look, when you how long the round, also like our perception of time, which changes significantly if you are just doing it for the sake of doing and thinking how hopefully quickly the round will get over. Those 5 minutes stretch out to half an hour. It
Yeah.
feels like this is a never-ending moment, right?
Yeah.
And that's like I work with them a lot, right? Going through the pain and being non-reactive to the pain, right? You just like, okay, is this the pain? It is what it is, right? You cannot you can all now fall into victim mindset and start crying over it. Well, of course, none of them starts crying, but right, you can go into this mental dialogue, and the inner narrator tells you how much you hate it, and just get over with this. This is not how you build the champion's mindset, because you will have to dig deep in the fight,
Yeah.
right? There will be the moment where you really don't want to be there, and then until then, you have to train it, and all those trainings we've done, and all the sparrings, and all the ice baths, and all the uncomfortable things to do. There's always the saying, expand instead of contract,
Mm-hmm.
right? To expand and open up instead, because we want to contract, right? It's also like a deep physiological reaction, right? We want to freeze, we want to run away, yeah, right? But that's exactly it. To train it so many times that you expand and you embrace it. You feel the blood, you feel the pain. It's like, yeah, let's effing go, right? That's the mindset. And that so for a lot of people, especially where I am, counterintuitively is that this moment when you hit that really, when you have to dig deep, right? When you're in deep water, when it's painful, when the blood is there, when you're getting, I don't know, you just getting wrecked there. You will live from those moments where you showed presence and awareness. That's what brings you further, right? That's the real warrior spirit in that moment, right? Exactly that ability to really embrace that experience. If you can embrace that experience and turn your mind around and your body and your spirit in the hardest moments, that's when you will go, like, you will go to the top. You might lose a fight. Of course, we all lose a fight sometimes,
Yeah.
but you will build a real career, and you build a real, true, authentic, strong self.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're totally right with that.
Yeah. Do you find that fighters, it's easier for them to lean into physical discomfort than it would be emotional?
Mm.
Do you think
Yeah.
that, does it seem to be, it's harder for the fighters that you work with to accept, say, an emotional, uncomfortable situation versus physical?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a natural thing. I think that's the non-reactivity to understand that. So for, let's say, different. So for a lot of people, if we don't learn it, if we don't, for us who are maybe not fighters, who don't challenge ourselves so much, we don't even realize how often physical pain and emotional pain is completely connected in us, right? We have physical pain, we have immediately an emotional reaction to it. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is what a fighter needs to learn. That's exactly also what I teach them, right? Non-judgmental awareness to what is all body sensations, emotions, and thoughts, right? Those three things. And then that is very, very powerful. And I think that's actually what every kid should learn. The
Yeah.
non-reactivity. And of course, for fighters will be, for us, for me, was the same thing. I didn't suffer because of physically, you get conditioned quickly. You get kicked so many times. I was in the Netherlands in the highest times of kickboxing in the Netherlands. You know, my first sparring in Voss gym was one of the biggest gym back then. It was in the basement. You came down, and they were like, okay, 10 rounds of the 3 minutes back then, but 10 rounds of sparring. And I was like, I was 16, 17. I was like really shy. And they're like, they went like hard for 10 rounds. It was like, oh, you make it, or you just go home. It's not for you. Go play golf, right? And it was like, you get used to this, right? For the first, I would say, really, for the first year, I had trouble. I had even to cry after for the first sparrings. I went to the locker and I cried, and the girls were like, don't worry, we had the same thing. You just have to get over it. I was like, I don't think this is for me. I had some thoughts about it, but then I grow into it, and then physically you got to completely conditioned.
Yeah.
But then I did not work it out emotionally, and that was a problem for me as a fighter then, because nobody taught me back then, hey, physical pain, okay. No, I didn't even realize it's the emotional pain, my reactivity to this emotional pain, what comes, right, with being under pressure, with when it gets hard, when it hurts, when maybe you're on the losing end, and so on. I never understood this concept, right? And I think for fighters in general, it's easier to go into physical pain, but also we as mental performance coaches need to work a lot on this to teach them non-reactivity, physical pain, emotional pain, or negative thoughts, right? Non-reactivity, non-judgmental awareness, neutral awareness to what is. That's the key for really overcoming, I think, all kinds of obstacles when it comes to mind and body.
Yeah, I love that. I think about how a reaction and a response is very different, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah,
response is, and they might, like, the window between the two
yeah,
is so
yeah.
tight, but a
Yeah.
response is a controlled versus just being jerked, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something what I really like about mindfulness. Also, what they say about, right,
Mm.
to instead of reacting automatically, responding intelligently. It's such a it's so true and so beautiful, simple concept. Well, we in mindfulness you speak a lot about the window of tolerance. Also, I think yesterday I did a video about this actually. I didn't post it yet though. So our window of tolerance, right, where we are balanced and when we are regulated, right, when everything above is hyper aroused, everything about down is hypo arousal, right, and how to widen that window, right, that is also something you need to work on. You have to widen so you are more flexible and adaptive, right? That's resilience, to widen that window of tolerance where you can stay balanced and under control. That's really resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, I think those are very, very important things. Actually, in my MEC program, I'm teaching all of that, and I am preparing a version for children also now, because a lot of athletes went through the Mindful Athlete program and they love it, and it's yeah, people actually are really doing well with that. And yeah, I want to do a kids version because we need that.
Yeah.
All everything we speak about, right? It's essential. It's essential for us humans to thrive. And you know, one thing is also which this is something I understood the last years, that how much impact it does if we of course the change has always had to happen to within. You have to change first, right, and you will see the change. And when we make strong individuals, we will create finally a strong community and a balanced community. And that is something I did not always understand. I think that maybe you understand when you get a little bit more older or mature, hopefully.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm working exactly on this to bring all of those concepts because it's so important.
And it's needed even more now, I think, with the effect of social media and media in general. I think there's just so much more, there's so many more things that are pulling our attention. And
Yeah,
I often do think about kids and how, I mean, I'm 42 and I'm in that, that gap where I had technology, when I was a kid, but not really. I understand how to use it, but I have an awareness of how it's beneficial and it can be positive, but it also can easily just pull you in so many different directions. I really value that in what you're doing because we do need it. And I think most people just don't realize how distracted they are, how reactive they are.
mm,
And that leads to a lot of negative things. Anxiety, stress, depression can all be
totally.
tied to that, right? So yeah.
Totally. I think I agree so much to you. And also, I think that we all really underestimate how powerful the mind is. And we need all to, even when I'm working on this, I have to remind myself constantly how powerful the mind is and that basically everything starts in the mind.
Yeah.
That is the truth, right? All of your states, right? We have control over our states, our physiological state, our mental state, our emotional state. We have much more control over this than we think, but it starts with the mind and with the brain, right? It's
Mhm.
always like mind, brain, body, the connection of it.
Yeah.
And you can influence mind, brain, body through different exercises, different techniques you do. And that is so, for a lot of people can't, again, like they just don't, because we never learned it.
Hmm.
Nobody tells us. Nobody who told you, um really seriously, not just like the little sentence, of course, yeah, like everything starts in the mind, and it's like the mind has to be strong. Yeah, okay, as a kid you not always get it, right? But
Right.
really to teach us that, right, it is so important. And we underestimate the power we have, the power of the mind, and how the mind influences everything, all of our well-being, or the brain. So
Yeah. There's a I think a statement in Buddhism where it's, all suffering exists in the mind, all happiness exists in the mind, right?
yeah,
And I do agree with that. I think there is always some type of conceptual layer that is getting filtered through the brain. And even
yeah,
if that's sensory motor, it's
yeah.
always filtered. So with that understanding, we realize how powerful it is to be able to affect it, to alter it, right? And that's
You
what
know,
you're doing.
sometimes I laugh about that with my mom. Okay, we have this little, I'm very close to my mom, and sometimes people sort of look at us because she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, you look tired and you look like little, like just like don't look so good. So probably you're feeling really well because it is actually funny when I feel really good internally. Forgot to brush my hair. I
Yeah.
don't wear makeup. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't wear in general a lot of makeup. I don't care, right? I
Yeah.
just go up, I take on a hoodie and something, and because I'm at the gym the whole day, so I forgot to brush my hair. I have my bun somewhere or my head. And she's like, my mom's a very proper lady. And she's like, oh, you look interesting. So you're feeling very good, right? And now it's, of course, you get older and it's more balanced. But in the past, it was clearly like this. When the worse I felt, the more attention I put, like to looking good, putting some makeup on, choosing my clothes, right? You want a special car, you want this and that, right? You focus on the external things.
Mm-hmm.
But the better you feel, and when you once you understand how much impact you have, and you do all of your practices, right, the mental and the physical practices to really feel good, then yeah, you're much more introspection, right? You do much more introspection. You're more internally just right. The worse we feel, the more we of course focus externally, and that's yeah, we laugh about that a lot actually. That's yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's good awareness. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what?
sorry, but coming back to it, but that's exactly how it is, right? That inner state. Like
Mm,
the circumstances can be not great, but if your inner state is okay, if you feel good, you can actually find yourself in a quite bad circumstance, and you'll be like, yeah, okay, I can do it. You might be not super happy about it, but
right.
it's workable, right? You're balanced, you have control, and it makes it workable. And you just yeah, you don't fall into victim mindset. You're not so reactive, right? You're not reacting automatically. You're responding intelligently. That's so much more control. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, love it. So what is something right now you're really looking forward to? You're excited about the project you're working on with the mindfulness for kids, mindfulness athletes for kids, a fight that's coming up. Is there something that you're really excited about? Or
um
just life in general, right? You're just excited about it all. But
yeah, I think I reached a place in my I'm just happy about the little things, the big things. I'm very very happy about the project, what I'm doing, because my plan is in the next 5 years to build facilities also, not just to bring this online program to actually so it can manifest in facilities. So I'm talking to a lot of investors, and we have a great business plan together, and we want to bring that to many different countries also, because I want to teach people, not just professional fighters. I want everything I know, everything I've done with the professional fighters or the special forces guys, I want to bring to the world, because that's the knowledge we need. And I'm absolutely super passionate about this. So I'm excited about this, because this project is just taking really form, and got a very good team to support me. And yeah, the next 5 years will be really interesting.
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, shoot, girl. I feel like we could talk forever. I always feel like these conversations, could just go on, but um, and try to keep them to about an hour. So maybe we'll just have to do another one
Yeah,
because
let's
that,
do
yeah,
one.
I feel like we could talk forever. But tell everybody where they can learn more about you, where they can find you. I know it's on Instagram. You have your website.
Yeah.
Where are the best places for people to connect? If people are interested in those programs that you offer, I mean, I think I might sign up. I might do one. I'm interested to learn more from you. So where can people find that?
So it's info@dariaalbers.com, or it's of course Daria Albers on Instagram, and on dariaalbers.com on my website also there's a form
Yeah.
people can fill in. Yeah, just feel free to reach out. I am looking actually forward to connect as much like-minded people as I can, because I want to build facilities. I know I need. I really want to change the world, and I want to do lasting transformation in people. So I'm happy to connect to anybody who wants to connect, and yeah, wants to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm in the same space. It's these ideas, these concepts, these principles, the thought process have changed my life. And like you said earlier, I'm nowhere close to being, where I want to be, but I'm excited for that ongoing growth. And I think it's, there isn't a finish line to that. But it really is cool to connect with people. And, again, like I feel like I know you. This is the first time we've spoke.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really cool to be able to do that and to share these ideas, because I do think I know everyone can benefit from them. And
Yeah.
it's like the easiest thing, but the hardest thing all wrapped up in one, right? Being
Yeah.
more aware and being awake to what's going on in your head it really isn't that difficult, but it is, right? It's like, I don't, it's like an interesting,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think for me, like I understand more and more the importance of community to really connect to people. We thrive, although of course some of us are more introverts, some are more extrovert, but we thrive. We all need people. We like-minded people, people that we can coming again back of a topic of the topic of the whole talk. To be our authentic selves and people that help us to step into it and give us the safety and give us share the knowledge, so we all share, because together we create something, always something bigger than each of us will ever do. And that is something I did not always understand, but I understand now. So I'm also super grateful that you reached out, that we could connect, and yeah, let's have more talks for sure.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again. It's
Thank you.
been a pleasure. And what time is it where you're at? It's nighttime, right? It's
It's yeah, it's 11 p.m. now, so it's
oh,
time
so
to sleep.
is that your bedtime?
Yeah, soon.
Close. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.